Hey guys. Hi family. Good evening. Happy to be with you guys again today for another episode of our Damage Not Destroy series, our book club. We are on chapter 9. I'm super excited. We are just moving and grooving through this thing. It's gone by so quickly. I am home this weekend. No fabulous travels this time around. I'm just, kicking it at the crib. I've been home all day. I was in my pajamas, but I put on a little nice little t-shirt or something and combed my hair so I look somewhat decent today. Anyways, guys, we got a lot of good stuff to talk about. There's definitely some stuff I want to address as we wrap up this book. With us being on chapter 9, we have one more chapter to go. Chapter 9 was very short. But yes, we have one more chapter to go, and then we will be done, y'all. I'm thinking I'll do like a little recap after we're finished with the book. One, to buy a little bit of time and to create some space in between the transition into our next books. I don't know about you guys, but I literally have to make a serious effort to be here when, I'm doing all the stuff. So I'm thinking I'll probably need a break and I plan to take it. So, yes, we'll be doing this for a couple more weeks. I'm thinking by mid July, end of July, we'll be starting the next book. So, join me for that. Like I told you before, we are doing The Bait of Satan by John Bevere. Go ahead and get your copy. Should have had it in here, but it's not in here. So, just, you know, stay tuned in for the next one. I'll show you the book again. I showed on the last one, so go back and check it out if you have any trouble finding it. It can be found pretty easily on Amazon. So I know I'm thinking I'll do a storefront for all the books that we read. So you could just click the link to my storefront, get the books, get any study material that I come across that I think is helpful, and we'll just go from there. Hi, Victoria. Hi, King Bantu. Thanks for joining. I appreciate you guys being here, tuning in, checking in with me, checking in with your girl as we finish up Damage Not Destroyed by Michael Todd. And I kind of want to start off a little different today. It's been on my heart really heavy to speak about a certain group of people. Now, this doesn't relate to everyone, but for those who it does relate to, I just want to let you know that I stand with you and I'm with you, and I'm referring to victims or survivors of sexual abuse. If that is you, just know that my heart goes out to you. I don't care what the situation was, what happened, what you think you did, or how you might have caused it, what you said, what you wore, where you were when you shouldn't have been. None of those things take away from the fact that you have a voice and your no should matter. You were taken advantage of. And at the end of the day, regardless of the circumstances, that's a serious issue. And it's just been a burden on my heart this week to address those who have experienced sexual abuse. It's not a game. It's not a joke. And I figured it came at a perfect time, especially since we're talking about healing as we've been reading this book, guys. It's just on my heart to address it. First and foremost, I empathize with you. I've had my own struggles in this area over the different stages in my life, and that's so sad to say, but it no longer has a hold on me. It no longer has control of me in my life. The things that have happened, how it happened, why it happened, me blaming myself for what happened, that is no longer where I'm at. And I'm slowly and surely going through and breaking down the walls of trauma that have gotten me to where I am, because I want to be happy. I don't want to be a victim of my circumstances and the things that have happened that I didn't have control over. And, I just want you to know that you are loved, you are heard, you are seen, you are valued. And I pray that you find the courage to share your story. You never know, who's going through through those things, who needs encouragement from your testimony. And, the words of our testimony heal. The things that are kept in secret continue to have their power because they're in secret. And if no one has told you, I will be the first. Tell your story. Share your story. Let the power that it's had over you, over keeping the secret, over protecting those predators, our abusers, let that go. Let that be removed from you. Um, like I said, I stand with you. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for the strength of your heart. And, I empathize with you. And I definitely want to make sure that we are all mentally strong. Even for those of us who, that's not your story, you've not been a victim of sexual abuse. Emotional regulation is a big deal. And trauma can dysregulate our emotions, our thoughts. That's where I feel like that's one of the places where mental health, it begins with that emotional dysregulation. And we're not able to regulate. You're not able to share your story. You're not able to be free by the truth of your testimony. It internally destroys you. And I just pray for your strength. I pray that you have the opportunity to release that baggage, that trauma, that damage, in whatever way that comes. If it's through therapy, if it's through talking about it, if it's through, group sessions, if it's through reading books like this, I just pray that you come to the space of healing, because it's going to change your life in every area of your life. And I know this from experience. So sorry, guys, you'll hear me breathing deeply often as I talk about these things. That's how I regulate myself as I'm talking about hard things. I just wanted to, touch on that. It's been heavy on my heart, like I said. And then I'm also wanting to give some people some time to join in before we get started. We will be starting here soon. I've missed you guys. I really wish I could have been at the beach again today. But, all good things come to an end at some point or another. I'll be back, though. I will definitely be going back. So you can bet that. I got a little tan. I was happy. Got some R&R. It was much needed. Absolutely. So, okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, we're doing chapter 9 of our book today, Damage Not Destroyed. Chapter 9 is called Damage Control. So we'll be going through this chapter, guys. It's literally like 10 pages, if that. It's a very short chapter. But I'm figuring as the book wraps up, the last few chapters are very short. So just keep that in mind. So we're probably not going to be here a whole hour. So yeah, let's get into it. So chapter 9, Damage Control. Conflicting stories is where he starts the subsection in this chapter. And he gets back to David and King Saul. Now, if you guys remember last week, we wrapped up chapter 8 by talking about the story about David's damage, about his troubles with his family, his troubles with his sons, how he didn't stand up for his daughter who was raped, and how his son, as a result of him not doing anything about that rape, killed his other son who did the rape. So now he's on the run. King David's on the run from his son who did the killing, because now his son wants to take his throne. And he decides that running away would be the best option instead of standing and fighting, which would cause a full-blown civil war in the land of Israel. So that's where we are. So we pick up there, and he starts the chapter off by saying that David relied on God's timing to take the throne of Israel. So if you guys know the story of David, you know that after he's anointed king, him and Saul, who was the king at the current time, who is also Mephibosheth's grandfather, they start developing a relationship. They're good friends, but then King Saul gets jealous of David. He sees the anointing on him, he sees the greatness in him, and he becomes jealous behind that. So he tries to kill him on several occasions, which also makes King David go on the run. Now he's running for his life from King Saul, who was once his friend. And he had several opportunities to kill him as a result of King Saul trying to kill him, but he didn't take him. He's like, I'm not going to put my hand on an anointed one of God. And that stopped him from taking his life. And he took a humble road, even though he had the opportunity to kill Saul several times. So and then he is also depending on God now in the situation because of the fact that his son is trying to kill him and take the throne. And instead of fighting, he's running. He is leaving it in God's hands and allowing him to work it out in whatever way he's going to. And as he's fleeing, guess who shows up? Ziba. Ziba's got a whole lot to say as it refers to Mephibosheth and King David. So as King David is on his way out, all his family, all his servants, the whole, state of his house, they're leaving. They're leaving Jerusalem. Ziba meets them with some supplies for their trip and food and wine and things like that. So Saul asks Ziba, "Where is Mephibosheth?" Ziba responds and says that he stayed in Jerusalem. And he says that today, Mephibosheth said, Mephibosheth said, how many of us have been in those types of situations? But anyways, Ziba said that Mephibosheth said that he is going to get back the kingdom of his grandfather Saul. And that's why he didn't come, because now he's against David. After all that David has done for him, now he's against David. Now, these are Ziba's words. We don't know if they're true. This is just what he said was said. So, David responds to Ziba and says, well, in that case, you can have everything Mephibosheth owns. Ziba responds by bowing before him, and that ending is in 2 Samuel 16, 3-4. So the chapter continues on, and he says exactly what I said. Like, Mephibosheth, how you gonna bite the hand that feeds you? This man been taking care of you. You've been eating at his table. He been giving you royal access, and you gonna tell him you avenging your grandfather's. Like, what is you talking about? Like, I just can't. The level of betrayal, if he actually said that, because again, we don't know at this point, but just the nerve is all I'm gonna say. And from where David's sitting, it's really not hard to believe what Ziba says, that Mephibosheth said his own son is after his life and trying to take what is his. So, he rules it as truth without doing any fact checking and gives everything Mephibosheth owns to Ziba. And then he leaves the town. He leaves for a little while, but of course he comes back. He's still king. Absalom never, ends up getting to take the kingdom. He ends up dying. When he dies, King David comes back. Hi, Tobias. Hi, Wacky Dip. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining. So he comes back, and when he comes back, Absalom is dead. And guess who meets him this time when he comes back to the city? Good old Mephibosheth. He's right there. And, he's stinky. Again, guys, remember, he cannot walk. So without the servants of the king's court, he can't do anything on his own. So he is still dirty. He's not been shaved. His feet are dirty. He smells. He's not been bathed. None of that. And when King David sees Mephibosheth, he says, well, why didn't you come with me? Why didn't you come with me, Mephibosheth? And Mephibosheth responds and says, my lord, the king, my servant Ziba deceived me. I told him to saddle my donkey so that I may go with the king, for as you know, I am crippled. Ziba has slandered me by saying that I refuse to come. That's 2 Samuel 19:24 through 27. So now we're in a situation, or King David is in a situation where it's Ziba's word against Mephibosheth's word. Definitely some he said, she said going on. And it's confusing because the Bible also doesn't say who's actually telling the truth. He doesn't say that at all. I mean, the Bible doesn't say that at all, but what he does say is what is articulated is the response, Mephibosheth's response to King David after he said after he said Ziba, deceived him. And instead of telling us who's right and who's wrong, we're shown who's actually telling the truth. And in fact, it is Mephibosheth that is telling the truth. And we know that because of how he meets the king. But before we go there, we're going to talk about how Mephibosheth in his actions towards the king, once the king returns, shows us how to do step 4. Remember, we remember the hit, we recognize the hurt, we realize the hindrance. Now the 4th step is to reset to humility. So we're resetting to humility, and Mephibosheth resets to humility in his response to the king. And he takes the low road. Sometimes it's worth losing your dignity to get to your destination. And I think that how he meets the king is showing that he's humbled himself. He didn't go out of his way to get cleaned up. He didn't try to freshen up or any of those things. Hi, Britt. Thanks for joining. He didn't try to freshen up. He didn't try to get himself together. He didn't try to clean himself off. He didn't do none of that. He came just like he was when the king left. He had not bathed. He had not done anything since the king had left to flee from the land of Israel because of his son. And this chapter points out the fact that this is now his 2nd emergency palace evacuation. Now, if you guys remember when we first started reading and we were first introduced to Mephibosheth's character, how was he crippled? He was crippled because he was fleeing from the palace. His grandfather had been killed. His father had been killed. And he was next. His caretaker, his babysitter, dropped him and paralyzed him. That was where his damage first happened and how he ended up in Lodabar to begin with. Do you see how very much alike this story is? Now, granted, he's already paralyzed, so he's not getting re-paralyzed, but it's another palace emergency evacuation that leaves him from here down here, where he's being taken care of every day. He's eating with the king. He's living in the palace, living great, to back to his low means of operation, because again, he can't get around. He can't do for himself. So Ziba, the one who was supposed to help him, walks away from his responsibilities. And at that point, Mephibosheth has a choice. He can let Ziba's actions destroy him and let Lodabar back into his life, or he can let all that time that he spent at the king's table in the king's presence shape and affect a different response than the one he had when he first experienced his trauma. And he chooses the latter. He chooses to not go back to Lodabar, but to wait out the storm of David being gone, the storm of the king's presence being gone. So he's looking funky, he's smelling funky, but then he meets King David, when he comes back, and his lack of care for himself in King David's absence shows the king that, okay, you wasn't trying to play both sides. Because listen, hear me out. At the end of the day, Mephibosheth it would have been smart for him to just play both sides. Oh, well, King David's gone. Let me get on the winning side. King Absalom is about to take the kingdom. He's living in the palace now. Let me just act like I'm down for him, even though I'm really not, until things switch. No, he did not take that route. He took the hard route. He took the route of going back to that low place, going back to not eating at the king's table, going back to not being able to fend for himself or to have adequate help to fend for himself. Because at this point, Ziba has left him high and dry, just like, oh yeah, well, figure it out, buddy, And instead of letting Ziba's actions cause more damage, he just waited out. Mephibosheth's funkiness is evidence that he didn't put on a party to celebrate the overthrow of King David's reign. He deliberately went unwashed and ungroomed to demonstrate where his loyalties lie, and that is evident to the king upon his arrival. So it's the best thing he could have done. So then he goes back to, Mike Todd goes back to talking about himself and how he was saying that, he didn't care about looking foolish. He only cares about keeping his connection with the king, much like Mephibosheth. He didn't care about the fact that he was stinky and the fact that he just wasn't on that high horse he was on when David was in his throne. He took the low road. He humbled himself to wait for the king's return and to not switch sides and to not, be disloyal after everything that the king had done for him to restore him. And Mike Todd talks about how he has also tried to be humbled or had to humble himself. He's saying that the hardest thing is not being humble, open, and transparent about his damage. Because, again, he struggled with porn addiction, premarital sex, car insurance fraud. This man went to jail for car insurance fraud. And he's now a pastor. That wasn't the hard part, because he knew the enemy is defeated by the blood of the Lamb, which is grace, and the word of our testimony, which is Revelation 12:11. Talking about the failures keeps him accountable and keeps the devil defeated. Let's stop there just for a second. Recall what he says. Talking about our failures keeps us accountable and keeps the devil defeated. Think about all the hard times that you've had in life, all the things that you might have considered traumatic, and how our first instinct a lot of times is to hide those things, to never speak of them again, to keep that secret. And this is why when I first started talking today, I wanted to let you guys know, when you keep that secret, it gives it power, because here you are fighting a battle alone. You're fighting a battle alone. And, there is strength in numbers. It's hard. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to share your struggles. It's hard to speak about your story because, people are mean. Someone could say, oh, you're not telling the truth, or, oh, well, you must have done something, and, gaslight you, or, make you feel like your testimony and the things you went through and your experiences are invalid. And, nobody wants to go through that, but I'm here to tell you, there is freedom. There is freedom in telling your truth in a safe space, obviously, to someone who will listen and who will support you, not just to any and everybody, but there is power in being vulnerable in that way. And I pray that all of us find that strength in our voice, that strength to speak our truth and to not hide from it, not let it be hidden and keep controlling us subconsciously because of the fact that it's unaddressed. Moving on. King Bantu says, most relatable story. Thanks. You're very welcome. Very welcome. All right, so he moves on by saying, the hard part is being vulnerable, Being vulnerable is incredibly hard, guys. I know for me, I always felt like it made me look weak. It made me feel like I was the weakest link because why am I crying? Why am I sitting up here talking about my feelings? Like nobody else is doing that. Why should I? Like no, I'm gonna just keep it in and be hard and act hard like I'm not bothered and and just go from there. But that's weakness. There is no strength in hiding. No matter what form it comes in, it doesn't matter. Vulnerability is the strongest position that you can take. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less than. It gives you power because you are strong enough. You have the courage to speak your truth. No matter who will say what, no matter who doesn't believe or whatever, you know where you stand. And when you open that door to allow the right people to come in and to support and to encourage, to strengthen, it changes things. It really, really does change things. Hi, Lala. Hi, baby girl. Thanks for joining. And then he goes on to say that humility makes space for the Holy Spirit. When we humble ourselves, when we bring ourselves down a notch and realize that we don't know everything, we don't got everything, we don't, always know what's best, even though we like to play like we do. We create room for the one who does know what's best to come in and help us. He said as he moved through the checklist of remembering the hit, recognizing the hurt, realizing the hindrance, and hushing, hearing from God, understanding progressively, sharing intimately, and getting to the heart of the matter, to get to humility is how he found out that the heart of the matter actually is that he was a grown man whose damaged inner 13-year-old needed a hug from Jesus. You guys, can I just say that hugs they change a lot of things. Like, oh my gosh, I love me a good hug. If you're a good hugger, oh my goodness, God bless you. Because, but a hug from Jesus, now that's life changing. But he goes on to say that as he was going through that, and even as we recall the story of Mephibosheth and King David, nobody but the king matters to him, to them. Nobody but the king, and only the king's opinion counts. Especially in the story of Mephibosheth. He doesn't care who thinks he stinks. He doesn't care who thinks he's, come down off his high horse or been elevated and now he's back down here. He don't care what nobody's saying about him. He's not willing to switch sides. He only cares about being in the king's presence, and he only cares about what the king thinks about him. I want to be like Mephibosheth, my king being Jesus. And then he moves on to another subsection in the chapter. The next subsection is called The King Knows Best. And then he begins this subsection telling a story about his kids, how when his kids do something wrong, they come to him. They want his help. They don't hide from him when they mess up. If they break something, if, something's, inoperable or sticky or nasty, and it's a result of one of their actions, they bring it to him. They call on him. They reach out to him. Their humility is natural because there's trust there. His kids trust him. He has built a relationship with them, and they trust him to help. And he does. They trust him to know what's best and how to get through whatever they're dealing with best because he's the adult. He's daddy. And then he transitions and says that he realized that his reluctance to be vulnerable was a hindrance. And he also realized he did not trust God the way that his kids trusted him. And that instead of running to the Father the minute I got damaged by others, I would try to sort it out on my own and then present our Father with a solution as if God needs our help, right? I can identify with that struggle. I've definitely been there. And then he comes back in to the story in 2 Samuel where it says, Ziba has slandered me by saying that I refuse to come, but I know that my Lord the king is like an angel of God, so do what you think is best. That's 2 Samuel 19:27. And then he goes on to say, wait, why isn't Mephibosheth arguing his case? Why isn't he laying out all the evidence? Why isn't he pointing out all the damage that Mephibosheth has caused? Why isn't he mentioning that? The only response, once he told King David that that Ziba deceived him, the only response he has is, I know that the king is like an angel of God, and that he can do what he believes is best, which lets us know that Mephibosheth, over all the times he sat with him at his table, over all the time that he has spent with him, has now learned to trust the king. The king has shown himself again and again to be kind, to be generous, to be trustworthy. He has kept each of his promises to Mephibosheth. So now Mephibosheth trusts him to do whatever he feels best in the situation. And then Todd asks some questions. Are we humble enough to believe that our king knows best? I want to be humble enough to believe that. It's a struggle, don't get me wrong. It really is. But the truth is, the more we trust him, the easier it gets to trust him. And we can trust him by reminding us of all the other times he's come through for us, all the other promises he's kept to us. And some of those things he's listed here. He's never failed me. He's never not been faithful. He's never not worked it out. He's never left me hanging. He's never abused me. He's never rejected me. You guys, I'm going to share a little something with you guys. I go through hard things. I've just gotten out of one of the hardest seasons of my life. Well, seemingly so. To enter another very hard season. And when I get discouraged and I feel like, what am I going to do? Like, what is my next move? Like, I don't know where I'm going, if I'm coming, if I'm going, if I'm up, if I'm down. I don't know. I don't know. Every day is literally different. But when I have hard days, I remind myself of some of these things, because there have been times when I told myself, and I don't know, it's because if I didn't have anything else to lean on, but I've told myself, you know what? I'm going to leave it in God's hands. Anytime I ever do, it's worked itself out. Maybe I'm being, maybe I'm not, facing it and I'm running, as some would call it. But at the end of the day, I have nothing else. I have nothing more to give. There's nothing else I can do. There's no more control that I have. So guess what? God, I'm giving it to you. I trust you. You will never leave nor forsake me. You know the plans you have for me. You've known me since before I was in my mother's womb. If these are your truths, which I believe they are, my word says that, you got to figure it out for me, Lord. You've got to direct me. You've got to direct my path. You've got to show me where to step, because at this point, I don't know. And he has every time, every single time. And then Mike Todd moves on to say that he prays, Lord, you know best prayers all the time, and gives us a couple here. Lord, you know best about my relationships. I trust you. Lord, you know best about my finances. I trust you. That has been a prayer that I have been praying over the past, since I started my business, y'all. Because if you guys know anything about entrepreneurship, no day is like the previous. There are ups and downs. There are constant changes. Things are always different. They're always going one way or another. It's like riding a roller coaster. You're just on for the ride. You don't know what's coming or what's going to happen. You just hold on tight and pray for the best, So that's been something I've been praying for a long time, and it's kept me. I haven't worked a regular 9-to-5 job since I started. So he's still walking with me, y'all, and it's still working. So I'm gonna keep praying. Lord, you know best about my family. I trust you. Lord, you know best about my influence. I trust you. Lord, you know best about the timing. Ugh. Now that one just hits right here, y'all, because how many times have we tried to, supersede God's timing? make something that we want happen in our timing when we're ready, and it doesn't happen. So it can naturally be discouraging. But then when it does happen, you're like, oh, wow, now I see why I had to wait. This is the perfect time. I've been there as well. So after that list, he gives us an opportunity to put our own prayers down here. Our own Lord, you know best prayers. So he leaves a blank. Lord, you know best about blank. I trust you. Fill in the blank, guys. There's like 6 of them here. So do that exercise. I did it. It's definitely relieving. Definitely feels like a weight off once you fill in your blanks and say them out loud a couple times. It's good stuff. So then he wraps up the chapter with a final subsection, and it's called Close to the King. So Mephibosheth goes a step past trusting the king and continues on by saying, you have honored me by allowing me to eat at your own table. What more can I ask? I am content just to have you safely back again. This is 2 Samuel verses 28 and 30. So another way of saying that is basically, King David, what matters most to me is being close to you. All the other stuff, the property, the wealth, the status, is just sprinkles on top of the perfect Sunday. I'm grateful for it, but I can live without it. Being in your presence and eating at your table is the only thing that matters to me, because that is what changed my life. That is the kind of relationship I want with the Lord. I do not want to come to the Lord when I need things. I want to know that he is with me because of who he is. I want to know that his presence is greater than any gift that he can give me. Now, I'm not saying I won't accept the gifts and that I'm not grateful for the gifts. I am. However, I realize that the true gift is his presence, because that is what changes our lives. That is what renews our mind. That is what softens our heart, that presence. Understanding who our Father is, allowing him to come in and work on us from the inside out. That's what changes and affects every other thing in our lives subsequently. So that is the true gift. Now, the blessings and things, they're great. If he gives you wealth, if he gives you status, if he gives you the desires of your heart, not the desires of your current heart, but the things he wants your heart to desire. When he gives you those things, it's amazing. It only strengthens the trust that you're already building by getting to know him, by getting in relationship with him, by getting in his presence. And that's humility. Realizing that it's not about the things, but it's about who you're with, who's with you. That's humility. And he reminds us of Jesus in the Gospels when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane before he is taken to the cross. How he prays to the Father, Lord, let this cup pass from me. If I don't have to go through these things, if there's any other way that you can make this happen, do that for me. But if there isn't, let your will be done, not that of my own. And it takes him all the way to the cross. Jesus doesn't just insist on his own way. He doesn't just insist that this is what I want, Lord, and you got to do it because I know that you can and you will. Sometimes we have to suffer. Walking with the Lord includes suffering, but one thing you have to know is that in the suffering, he is with us. He wraps up the chapter by saying, I promise this is what you'll discover after significant time living in the king's presence. He is worth more than all the things, all the blessings put together that he can give you. He is more than a loving family. He is more than relationships. He is more than even your mental and emotional health. He is more than success and influence. He is more than having things. He's so much more than all of that. He says, I honestly believe that all those blessings and more are what our designer has in mind for us. Those things are what God has in mind for us. That's what he has in store for us. And he's ready to pour them out when we are ready to receive. However, we also know that after walking with the king for a good while, that the purpose of those blessings is to draw us deeper to the source of them all. It's not to draw us closer to the things. It's to draw us closer to the one who provides us with those things, those opportunities, that success, that wealth. The purpose of those blessings is to solidify our trust in him, to understand that he gives good gifts to his children. If we as evil human beings, and I say, well, I don't say that lightly, but take it how you want, as human beings who have evil hearts know how to give good gifts to our earthly children, how much more will the King of Heaven, our Father, give us good gifts? He has good gifts for us. He has blessings for us. He has increase for us. He has whatever we need. His word says that he will provide for all of our needs, every single one of them, and more, according to his riches and glory. So if he has those things for us, that's not the purpose to get it. The purpose is not to get it. It's to get close to him so that we know how to receive his good gifts. Because we know what kind of Father that we have. We know what kind of Lord that we serve. We know the goodness of our Father. So knowing that he's all good, of course we're going to get good things. But even better, we're going to have someone to walk through this rough life with, to do the hard things in life without feeling like we're broken, without feeling like, we're alone. Loneliness is a real thing, and I get it. But he didn't want that for us. He's with us always. But you have to recognize that he is and that he's there in order to be able to know that he's with us, that and to appreciate the fact that his presence is there always if we get into it. Will you get into it? That is the question. So yeah, y'all, that's it. That was chapter 9. It's good stuff. It really, really is. I just want to thank you guys again, and I'll continuously thank you for joining me, for supporting me, for Amen, Francine. I think that's my auntie. Auntie, yeah. Thank you, Gary. It was awesome, wasn't it? So good, y'all. We literally have. You're welcome, King Bantu. God bless you too. Y'all, we have one more chapter of this book. Like, I am gonna do a recap the week after the last chapter, so that you guys can come on and tell me how this book has made you feel. Give me some feedback. I need to know, because I'm telling you, it's making me think completely different about a lot of things that when I'm going through, that I've gone through, that I'm feeling, that I've felt, helping me deal with past traumas, helping me get the strength and the encouragement to address some of the hard things. Like, listen, if you guys were here for the beginning of this, what I started off with, the strength I got from even addressing and even letting you guys know the fact that, that's something that I've gone through, a result of going through this book, of going through the steps to learn, to heal, to pray, to get close to the King, to understand that I don't have to hide. I don't have to hide. Yeah, it happened to me, but that's not who I am. It is not, it doesn't make me. I'm stronger every day because of it. And It's not going to keep taking from me. It's not going to keep, you know, making me feel like I can't have this and can't have that because of the things that I've gone through. Absolutely not. I will have the life that God has for me, regardless of what has happened, what I've gone through, what I've experienced, my traumas. I know who He says I am, and that's who I am. All this other stuff is just, it's just fluff. Life is hard. The world that we live in is full of sins. So, yes, we're going to have trials and tribulations, but it's not going to shape who I am as a person. It's not going to tell me who I am as opposed to who God has told me I am, because He has more power. So, yeah. Thank you guys. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday. I know I'm about to have to get ready to go to work here in a minute, so I'm going to let y'all go. Make sure you click on the link, subscribe to my YouTube, guys. Leave me some feedback. I will be putting the link above or below this video, depending on where you're watching. It's also in my bio on Instagram, and I don't think it's on Facebook, but we'll get there. But I love you guys, and until next week, we are healing and dealing. I thank you guys so much for allowing me to share with you and for sharing with me. And, I'm encouraging you. I'm praying for all of you guys. And until next time, love you, Auntie. You know I will, girl. Absolutely. Thank you, King Bantu. I appreciate you for tuning in and interacting. I really do. Thank you all so much. And until next time, I'll see you guys.